Who controls the security industry? You may remember on Earth, insurance companies are strictly regulated by the state. But on the OboxPlanet there is no state, so the question is, how can we make sure these institutions act responsibly? First, control transparency. Competition also means competition for transparency. The more competition, the more information. We already see this today. Let us compare 3 areas: state-run firms, regulated and competitive sectors. State-run sectors like electricity, water, public transport and schools, there is little or no competition. The state controls itself. People tend to think, I cannot change anything anyway, why should I bother? Then we have the heavily regulated sectors like pharma, finance, insurance, where licenses and approvals hinder competition. It leads to a few large companies with little new competition and close relations with their state supervisors. People tend to think they are controlled, and if it comes to the worst, the state will help to fix it. Then we have the competitive market, like cars, phones, restaurants, travel, consumer goods. Many new providers, constant comparison. There are reviews, YouTube blogs, experts, and high transparency. Example, I can learn more about my headphones in minutes than about my electricity provider in a lifetime. On the OboxPlanet, these 2 categories on the right do not exist. Everything is competitive, including energy, schools, banking, insurance, and security. And this means competition for price, quality, transparency, and reputation. And who exactly keeps an eye on whom? First, of course, the customers. As we have already mentioned, and in the field of security, they care especially about reliability and transparency. On the OboxPlanet, people have much more time to focus on things that actually affect them, because, as mentioned, there are no political news, no talk about politics, laws, debates, elections, or wars. Instead, the news is about things people can compare, choose, and influence, such as choosing a security provider. Second level of control is competition. And competition is even more ruthless than the customers. If even a tiny flaw is discovered, competitors will immediately exploit it. And these are not only existing companies, but also new ones waiting to enter the market. Plus, there are always investors ready to waiting for someone to perform poorly, and the moment that happens, they step in with better quality, price, or service. The third level consists of professional auditors and quality seals, like Guide Michelin for the security industry. The entire business model is based on one thing: reputation, more precisely, a good reputation. Because if they are inaccurate or dishonest, they go bankrupt immediately. And we all know a good reputation is much easier to lose than to build. So on the OboxPlanet there is real competition for trust and credibility, a strong financial incentive to be reliable. Just for comparison, if a government regulator makes mistakes or works poorly, they do not go bankrupt. Often they simply demand more budget and more power instead. How much violence is allowed? The general question is, how much force may I use as a private individual? And the answer is only as much force as absolutely necessary. And this applies in all cases when pursuing a criminal, in self-defense, or when helping someone defend themselves, and including helping children in danger. And if there is disagreement, neutral judges will decide afterwards. The criterion will be proportionality and the concrete circumstances. Whoever uses more force than was necessary to defend himself becomes an aggressor himself and has to answer for it. For example, if I suspect a neighbor of having stolen my TV, I would file a complaint with the insurance company and they would pay my neighbor a friendly visit. In the case of a child molester, With the risk of flight, on the other hand, it might be necessary for a SWAT-like professionals to storm his house. The accused can later sue, but if he is guilty, a neutral judge will probably say, "You started it." And the same applies to the implementation of court rulings. If the child molester is at risk of fleeing before the trial, he can be detained as a precautionary measure. And if the verdict then determines that he must be locked up, this will be done with all the necessary coercion. Principle is your third and final word for the Hope Be Unplugged challenge. Write it down, then send all 3 words from videos 2 through 4 to oboxplanet@gmail.com together with your mail home address and get your free printed booklet shipped worldwide until the end of 2026. Are extreme legal systems possible? Is it conceivable that there are areas with extreme differences like we have on Earth, let's say between the Netherlands and North Korea? Short answer, yes, but only voluntary and therefore very unlikely. As you remember, in Switzerland just 6% of all state expenses go to security, and these are so-called negative rights. 94% goes to so-called positive rights, and is there where we find the big differences between the countries on Earth. Just what are these positive rights, and how do they help us understand the Obox planet? The word negative rights comes from the obligation not to do something, not to steal or hurt others. It's what we have been talking about all along in this video. The word positive in positive rights suggests that there is an action involved. I have a right to receive things like medical services, welfare, social security, public schools, transportation, etc. Sounds positive, not? The problem is, goods and services do not fall from the sky. What some people get, others must give. The other side of the right to receive is the obligation to give. Now, if I force my neighbor to give me money, it's illegal and I go to jail, and that's the same on Earth as well as on the Obox planet. But on Earth we have the state who can force my neighbor to give him money to finance all the goodies. It's called taxation. On the Obox planet, since there is no state, there are no taxes, and there are therefore no goodies and entitlements. Well, wait a minute, you might say. Doesn't this make us less safe on the Obox planet without all of these social security programs? No, to the contrary, social security on Earth is a great illusion. All these programs today are only secure as long as there are productive suckers who keep producing and don't go on strike or run to other countries. And we know from experience that these programs are so costly that they may even end up impoverishing everybody. The same goes for the nice-sounding regulations like consumer safety, product safety, workplace safety, etc. Each one of them restricts people's lives, plans, and wealth creation. We will see how people on the Obox planet satisfy all of these needs for safety and security much more efficiently and sustainable. To sum it up, negative rights means don't hurt me or take my stuff. Positive rights, give me something, and regulations, you must ask first to follow rules. But what about contracts? Can people voluntarily establish strict societies? Yes, of course. A gated community, for example, can declare Catholic or some other law applies here, and they can impose punishments for so-called victimless crimes such as drug use, gambling, or prostitution, or they can impose particularly harsh punishments even for petty crimes. And if you choose to enter these properties, you voluntarily subject yourself to these rules. Others may try to establish communist or fascist regimes, but I doubt that they will have more members than a few would-be rulers. Such strict rules are always linked to private property and people. And of course, anyone can set the rules on their own property. It's like saying, no smoking in my house, or this club is only for Harley-Davidson owners. Visitors can choose to accept the rules, stay away, or leave the group. Sometimes there may be a penalty, but it's still voluntary. And that is the big difference to the state. With private rules, you can choose. With the state, you can't. If you're lucky, you can move to another country, but you cannot avoid living under some state, unless you move to the ocean, to Antarctica, or commit suicide. Now, for the most part, people on the Obox planet, just like on Earth, simply want to live in peace and run their lives as they see fit. Some may prefer communities with their shared values, others enjoy diverse places like cities. But there is one key rule. Safety and justice are there to protect life and property, and all the other rules are based on voluntary agreements. And those agreements can be changed or ended according to the rules of the contract. To sum it up, paraphrasing Hans-Hermann Hoppe, who brilliantly cuts right to the core, the difference between a private law society and today's world of states in one word is contract. More precisely, voluntary contracts instead of laws imposed by legislators, kings, or dictators. As we have learned, providing security in the sense of protecting life and property is a similar challenge all over the planet. And the greatest difference between security providers are probably about how strict the punishments are. And since we're coming to the end, let's have some fun and construct an extreme example to illustrate the workings of justice with neutral judges. Let's take soft justice meets harsh justice. Of course, such extreme rules would usually only exist in certain private areas, and people would know about them just like we know that different countries have different laws when we travel today. Now here is the case. Person A has a soft security provider, Zurich Safe. Their tradition is that if you steal, you pay double the value in punishment. Person B lives in a community and has voluntarily signed up for a provider who cuts off the left hand for thefts over $1,000. Now A steals $1,500 from B. What happens? Now if A were also from village B, just to mention, his hand would go off and nobody would be surprised because A had agreed to the punishment when he moved to village B. But A is from Zurich Safe and has never signed up for such draconian punishments. Now a neutral court will consider the circumstances and then decide. And as we will see, it does not matter if the court works with provider A or B. Case 1. Person A intentionally went into village B and knew the risk. He will get a harsher penalty than in case 2. Case 2. Victim B was a tourist in village A and A did not know that B had a harsh insurance. He will get a relatively milder punishment. So in case A, when A knew the risk in case 1, would he lose his hand? On Earth, yes. If you're in a country with this rule, off goes your hand. On the Obox planet, most likely no. Why? Because it would be too risky for the insurance companies and their courts. Because what if it later turns out that A was innocent? What if A gets a punishment he never signed up for? A lost a hand, it cannot be undone. And that would be a disaster for the courts, and the insurance companies and their competitors would take advantage of it. That is why in practice, courts tend to choose safer, less extreme punishments and most likely never sentence things that cannot be undone. And this is true no matter which security provider provided for the court. The harsher or the milder security company, in the end, they all are responsible for their decisions. Extreme punishments like very harsh penalties or even the death penalty just do not make practical or economic sense on the Obox planet. When people are covered by different systems with different levels of punishment, neutral courts will almost always choose the less harsh option. partly because they want to avoid making serious mistakes. Over time, this leads to more balanced and similar rules instead of very extreme ones, and that's why we see a world of equality before the law, of fairness, and overall great peace all over the Obox planet. QED quod erat demonstrandum, which was to be proven, as the Romans used to say. Next, my top 3 favorite books on private security. 1. The Private Production of Defense, Hans Hermann Hoppe's classic small treatise. Short, clear, and foundational, available free online, a must read. 2. The Order of Freedom by Oliver Janich. A very entertaining and thoughtful read with lots of real-world examples, highly recommended. Available on Amazon. And 3. The Legal Foundations of a Free Society by Stefan Kinsella. It's the cutting edge of current research on a private law society, several hundred exciting pages long. Guaranteed to challenge even experts, free online, but worth owning in print. Oh, wait, there is one more. My free introduction to Hans Hermann Hoppe's Thinking, the free download available via hoppeunplugged.com. Short and simple, guaranteed to get you thinking. And best of all, if you want to have some fun, buy 7 or 14 booklets at an extremely attractive price, shipped worldwide as long as supplies last, and give it to friends and foes, and see what happens. And with this, we are definitely at the end of the end. Thank you for your attention.